Welcome back. In this video I am talking about tantric conception and how I found out and discovered that I was pregnant. I know that this can be a sensitive subject, the topics of fertility, birth, the disappointment that can sometimes come with that journey. And I'm really sharing this experience because I don't think that the point of conception is shared enough. We'll suddenly hear that someone's pregnant, but not really always hear the journey that it took to get to that point. And I'm also going to be sharing the moment I discovered that I was pregnant because it was a surprise and it happened in one of the most unusual places and ways. I'm not sharing these as criticisms if you're not doing the things that I did and you aren't getting pregnant, and neither am I sharing these as strict rules that you have to do this and you will get pregnant. I'm sharing this as a story of my experience, and I hope that some of what I share might resonate and maybe some of what I share might inspire you as well. So let's get into it. Let's start with the call to have a child. I am not someone who has felt for my whole life that I wanted to be a mother. I've been pretty ambivalent about it. I didn't have a strong desire to, and I didn't have a strong desire against. So although I envisaged that one day it could be a part of my future, I wasn't someone who kind of fantasized about it a lot growing up. And I find so much fulfillment in the work that I do, running the School of Sensual Arts, and the people that I meet, and the birth of my book, which was very, very much its own conception and experience, that has really satisfied me for a really, really long time. And the journey to hearing the call, I really want to share with you because it is so deeply tantric in its conception of how this desire really came about. So every year at the School of Sensual Arts in our online membership, we share the 10 tantric wisdom goddesses called the Mahavidyas. And we do this in the season of the goddesses after Navratri, which is these 9 nights of the goddess, which we celebrate every year. I mean, it's celebrated 4 times a year, but there's a big celebration that I have been celebrating since I was born, and in my culture for many, many generations before this. And so it's really beautiful time that the community around the world at the School of Sensual Arts get together and we go through, after Navratri, the Mahavidya goddesses. These are the 10 great tantric wisdom goddesses. So Maha means great and Vidya is knowledge, and it's not just intellectual knowledge, but Vidya is a kind of soul knowledge, inner knowledge, knowledge that gives us access to our higher power. And I love to work with this particular consort of goddesses every single year because every time I visit them, something different awakens in me. And this year, there was one particular goddess that we worked with that awakened this deep and insatiable longing and call to meet the soul of my child. And I was really struck by this because this isn't something that I have ever experienced before. And also it was completely crystal clear to me that this was what I desired. The goddess that we were working with is called Tripura Sundari. And Tripura Sundari translates to the beauty or the goddess of the 3 worlds. The worlds that Tripura Sundari, or Shodashi as she's sometimes called, is speaking about is the physical, the subtle, and the causal. So there's this kind of great expansion of the work of this goddess being beyond what is here on this physical realm and kind of connecting us into the subtle and the causal as well. So already there are some themes there. Of course, when I was sharing this in our weekly Shakti flow class on Mondays, I didn't realize that this is what would come from it. So some of the things that this goddess holds is a sugarcane bow, And the sugarcane bow is pulled with the strings of desire, and the arrows of the sugarcane bow are made up of flowers representing the 5 senses. And so the sugarcane bow is really this instrument of desire that is awakened through our senses, so aligned with the work that we do at the School of Sensual Arts and the expansion of sensuality as this connection and portal through the senses into that which we desire and bringing that into the manifest form. Secondly, she holds a noose, and a noose is like a rope which represents attachment or that which binds us. And it also represents, because she's holding it, our ability to free ourselves from that which constrains us and keeps us in particular cycles. And then the third thing is a lotus. And a lotus represents both beauty, but also the spiritual journey, because a lotus grows from the darkest, deepest, muddiest beginnings underneath the surface of the water and finds its way through all of that, through the light, to really blossom. And in the Tantric practice, the lotus is said to live in the heart space, which really opens and flowers, as well as sometimes associated in Sahasrara, which is this crown that opens as we do this practice. So after we explored the metaphor and the mythology behind Tripura Sundari, and we also explored the yantra, the geometrical form, and the mantra. So that is the sound that accompanies this particular form. And remembering that in Tantra, the goddesses are not something that are outside of ourselves, but rather an activation of a quality that lives within ourselves. Shodashi really awakens this playful, innocent, almost childlike, not too young, like she's around 16, that's why I said Shodashi, because that's her 16-year-old self. But she awakens these qualities within us of beauty and longing and brings us closer to the thing that our soul is calling. And for me, surprisingly, that was a child. So I wrote a poem because it awakened also this deep creativity in that longing, and creation of a child is so close to creativity of anything. And so I think working with Shodashi can awaken not just the longing for a child, but also the longing to create. So I created a post on Instagram and it said, if you're seeing this, Tantric goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari has a message for you. And maybe if you're listening to this, you've been called here to listen to this message too. It says, let the rapture of desire lead you back to me. Let my ropes tie your limbs into presence until you feel so safe in my noose that desire holds you in its cosmic embrace. Suspended in the silence of its intimacy, let the trickle of my nectar whisper into your ear and soften your mind. Let it trace like a feather down your neck into the very delicate center from where you create. Oh, how the world desires you. Your body is a sugarcane bow. It longs to make love inside of you, with its 5 arrows made up of the senses. You shoot your arrows of desire into me, and you will see. The universe will let you taste it, touch it, feel it, listen to it, witness it. And oh, how it loves to be loved by you. And as you desire it and tease it and flirt longingly with all its frills and all of its seasons, it will embrace you like a lover in its arms for adoring it so. And oh, how it loves to be adored so. Notice the buzz of my bees accompanying your bliss state. A subtle vibration through your spine builds up to the stars and then descends down to the core. Until desire vibrates at such a frequency, a swarm appears to collect the sweet throbbing nectar of your flower, pulsing with the universal ecstasy through which the very world you desire to live in is created through divine reverence at my red lotus feet. When I read that back, and this is the first time that I have gone back to it, I can see how strong desire is awakened in me through working with this goddess. And I think that's just the most beautiful gift that we can give ourselves when we work with the goddess archetypes in Tantra. I have linked that below if you want to read it, if you want to save it, if you want to go back to it, then please do. What happened next? I had to take some tangible steps after this desire formed in me. And I firstly had a conversation with my partner. Some of you know him as Mr. X. We had spoken about having children maybe earlier on in our relationship before we got married. We saw it at some point in our future, but neither of us knew when. We both run our own organisations, and we both just moved into this house. I had a training and he had this new startup that he was working on. So we had made a plan that we would keep this in our thoughts and maybe begin the process in the year that was to come. So not that we would try conceiving, we would wait till the end of the year because we had certain things happening, but that we would begin to prepare our mind and our body and our home and our family for having a child at some point. The second thing that I started to do was to start to read around the subject of fertility. I had come into contact with it through the work that I do in sensuality and the sensual cycles that I speak about in my book Sensual. But I really wanted to go on a deep dive of research as I embarked on this journey because it is so central to the work that I do that this became a really great access point to learn more. And one of the books that I read, I think I was about 25% through this book when I actually conceived, is a book called Fertile by Pritam Atma. And it explores mystical motherhood. Because a lot of the books that I was reading and coming across were helpful, but they were also quite sterile. And I am someone who loves the mysticism, the holistic side of life, and doing what we can that's within our power to create the life that we want. And for me, that now was creating a fertile mind, womb, body, environment, relationship. One of the most powerful things that I read in just this first quarter of the book, which is written both by a midwife and someone who has experience in the tantric practices and the Kundalini world, is that we can see the body as a fertile place. We can begin to visualize the body as a fertile part of nature. And one of the most fertile times in nature is that season of spring, where for me in my mind, that's what comes to mind when I think of the fertility in nature. I think of course, the birds and the bees, but I think of flowers, I think of full blossom, I think of Holi, which is this big festival that we celebrate of colour that celebrates harvest. I think of greenery, I think of lusciousness, I think of the sun and the warmth. I feel the crispness of the air of winter transforming into this incredible new shift of landscape. In the book, it described a particular meditation that we can begin to imagine that this is our body. That is the season that our body is in, because fertility is created from a place of abundance, from a place of the inner land within our tissues and our thoughts and our body and our womb being in that inner spring. I shifted my lifestyle, so I brought this visualization and this intention into my weekly Tantra yoga practice. I began meditating on this kind of inner spring. I began bringing a lot more flowers into my home, and I began being gifted a lot of flowers, interestingly, as well. So although it was not spring at all in the physical environment that I was in, we were actually going from autumn into winter, my inner world was kind of moving from this internal state into that fertile experience. One of the other things that I was reading about was calling in the soul of the child, and that there are lots of souls kind of floating around and waiting to be called in as light beings into the body. And you can take from this what you will. This may be a little bit too far into the land of spirituality that you may want to go into, but for me, I loved this idea that actually we are conscious co-creators of the soul children that we birth into this world, and we are in collaboration with that spirit. We are in collaboration also with the material world, through which we have a direct experience with, and through which we know what that world is in need of, what that world is in longing of. And we are living in a world that is continuously repeating its cycles across the political landscape that we are currently in. And for me, when I was thinking about the soul child that I wanted to call in, I wanted to call in this light being. So I also imagined every time that I was in a kind of connection with myself or with my partner, it may have been just that we were looking into each other's eyes, or that I was feeling connected, or that we were kissing. I would think of this light being, and I would think almost as if I was writing an invitation for this light being to find us in the connection that we had, writing this intention into the connection that we were creating. So there was this deep call of a light being to break the cycles that we are living in this material realm, in the most loving and beautiful of ways. And there was also this deep visualization of the body as an inner spring and of this fertile land. So if I move now into some of the more practical things that I also did, was to shift my movement and my diet. So I have been working for years with a dear friend and coach of mine called Little Lady Lifts, and we have known each other since we were 16. And Fran has supported me through getting married and kind of navigating the craziness of the year when I was also launching my book. And when I heard this call, I reached out to Fran because I said that this is on the cards for me. I want to have a child, and I want to start creating a physical environment in my body where that could be possible towards the end of this year. So we got together, and Fran changed the way that I go to the gym and the exercises that I was doing. We also looked at my diet to make sure that I wasn't in excess, or I wasn't in deficit of the nutrition that I needed at that time. We started to incorporate things like walnuts and healthy fats into my diet, and to really shift kind of the way that I was eating and the way that I was training to have a focus on fertility. And I also shifted the way that I practice as well in my yoga practice. So I brought in a lot more work with circular movements with my hips. I thought about a lot of hip opening and womb meditation. I was bringing in those visualizations. And one of the most kind of unusual things that happened to me in the movement of my body is that I suddenly got this urge to run. I have never been a runner. It's not something that I enjoy, period. I was always last in the cross countries at school, always out of breath, always had stitches. It's just not been my kind of zone of flow. I love being on my yoga mat, stationary but moving. So to hear this call was kind of strange, but I thought, okay, my body seems to want to move and move fast. So I brushed off some old trainers and I began to run, and I used the Couch to 5K app. And I think I was around halfway, 5 or 6 weeks into running 3 times a week, short, very short stints that built over time when I conceived as well. And when I think about the architecture of what is happening in your body, so of course it's cardiovascular, but also when your feet are thudding against the ground, it's shifting a lot in the energetic body, and particularly the pelvis as well. So I really somehow feel I've paused running whilst I've been pregnant because I'm not a long-term runner, and particularly in that first trimester you shouldn't really be doing things that you weren't doing continuously before you fell pregnant. So I have put that on pause for another while. Maybe I'll get another call for it, maybe I won't. But I wonder if that was part of this journey, because it created a lot of blood flow, a lot of aliveness, and in the deep winter, it got me out and really, flushed the toxins from my body as well. Now we're moving into where I found out I was pregnant, and our conception happened in just the most gentle, spacious of ways. We had a long, unusual weekend at home with no plans, which is crazy because my work is always happening on like Saturdays or Sundays, or we have family events or friends around or something like that. But this was a really unusual weekend, and it was kind of this spaciousness, I think, and the pressure. Actually, by that time, we were on the journey to not conceive because we had plans later in the year, which I'll talk about. But it almost took the pressure off. And I think both with that kind of wider intention that was there and the spaciousness of not having that much going on, because I think it was post-Christmas and that kind of weird time between the end of January and the end of Christmas when no one knows what day it is. It was around that time. So there was space. And I sometimes wonder if that spaciousness also contributed to it, because we had tried before, and I have also felt the pressure that can be put on intimacy when you're going into it with the specific intention of conception, that it has to work and there has to be an ejaculation and this and that. And I learnt from not getting pregnant those months, and the disappointment and the kind of self-rejection that I felt from within myself, that it wasn't possible those months, that taking that pressure off was really necessary. So I kind of let go of that for a while. And I think in that spaciousness with some Bob Marley on. And now whenever I hear Bob Marley, I just smile, because I think that is just a beautiful energy to be calling in a soul child. So let's move on to now where I was when I found out I was pregnant, because I think it happened in one of the most unexpected places and ways. And part of me already knew that I was pregnant. I live in a body that has not always been connected to myself. So I have experienced series of numbness in my life where I'm void of sensation and connection to my body, and in a freeze state as well. And to have experienced the sensations that I did now in this different stage of my life, which told me that I was pregnant before I knew I was, very early on, I can only credit to the practice of Tantra yoga, because it is a deep body-based practice. And I have also been in therapy. I've done 6 years of psychoanalysis. And I think both of those things combined really helped that transition from numbness into really knowing what's happening in the body. Because some of the things that were happening in my body that gave me the indication that, whoa, I'm feeling different and I think I might be pregnant, before I took the test, was that I was getting spots, and I get spots anyway, but I was getting them in places that I never normally get them, and they were really big. So I was like, okay, skin is changing. My breasts were really, really tender, almost so tender that it was actually painful. And I thought, okay, that's very, very strange. I was having the most crazy aversions to certain smells. And again, I was probably only 2 or 3 weeks pregnant when this was happening. So it's very, very early on to kind of notice like, whoa, there was something that's now completely intolerable. And then finally, I was due to go on my menstruation on the day that I flew to India earlier this year. And so I was kind of ready for that to happen, had packed everything, had packed my wicker pants and my things that I needed to have a comfortable menstruating experience whilst I was in India. But I hadn't had my period after 7 days. And so putting all of those things together, I had actually bought a pregnancy test at Gatwick Airport before I boarded the flight, because I had this feeling that it might be the case, even though I was due on that day. So I took the test, and I was actually filming a video because although part of me knew that I was pregnant, part of me also didn't want to be disappointed, because I've done tests before and I felt that disappointment. So I was kind of distracting myself because I was alone, and I did the test and I was just kind of talking to the camera, and maybe I will share that at some point. But I have never seen, you have to usually wait like a minute or 2 or 3, depending on the test that you have, the lines appear quicker, because I suddenly looked down and the lines were there. And yeah, I was shocked, even though I knew. It was somehow like not wanting to get my hopes up too high that was the case, but it was true, and I was pregnant, and I was in India, and I was on this trip where I was going to be traveling for a few weeks to visit our yoga teacher training center. So I shared the news with my husband, and I shared the news with my parents, who I was with for a few days before going on to solo travel in Goa. And in Goa, I visited our yoga teacher training center, and it was so crazy because I had learnt to train as a yoga teacher in this tiny village in Goa 1 decade before, exactly, like to the dates. And to be there a whole decade later, visiting the place that we were going to be running our yoga teacher training, and moving from that place of being super numb 10 years ago to discovering I was pregnant, was wild. It was completely wild to be there by myself and to feel that. And that particular full moon in February is the Lalita Jayanti, which is the full moon that celebrates the goddess Tripura Sundari on her birthday. So a really full circle of celebration, from the desire and the call and to feeling the kind of full expression of that celebration in India for Lalita Jayanti. So I am going to be sharing in my next video the cave that first trimester was and some of the difficult parts of that experience. But to end this video, I wanted to share some of the unusual things that I never thought I would do while pregnant. So one of them is travel to and from India on a solo trip. The second one was that I then went in to study the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which is a seminal text on Tantra, while I was pregnant. So I was doing all these incredible connection rituals and practices whilst being in the first trimester and weeks of my pregnancy. And I did tell the teacher, because I wanted to inform the teacher that I was sitting with that I might not do everything, because I wasn't sure how I was going to react to certain practices. And she said to me, like, what a blessing that you are doing this and receiving these tantras, these technologies together, like with your child. And I think I was meant to be there with this child. So I had a beautiful time floating in the Goan Sea, where we'll be taking our yoga training later this year, and just really coming into contact with this new body of mine that was shifting and transforming and changing day by day. And then when I got back to the UK, I ran a spicy day retreat. We did life drawing, we did spicy dance, we did a couples date night. I led a circle holder training, bringing together a group of people who wanted to gather their own community. I went on a pregnancy yoga training to again really deepen and steepen in this knowledge. And I celebrated my mum's 70th in the Caribbean. Again, another long haul flight that I thought, whoa, I can't believe that these things are all happening in the first trimester. And there is another side to it, and I am going to be sharing what that is in my next video and how those things are possible and what else was happening behind the scenes in terms of symptoms, without painting it like this complete paradise. But what I want to leave us with in this video is what I learned in the pregnancy yoga training that I sat in, and the research that I have been doing since has left me with such a spark of feeling that everybody needs to learn what I learnt in these trainings and through this research, that we would live in a world of so much less fear if the stories that I was encountering around birth and fertility were shared instead of hidden behind closed doors. And I would love to bring you on that journey with me. So please subscribe and hit like if you enjoyed this story. Leave some comments, let me know how you found it. Join my new Instagram, Mothers and Lovers, and visit the School of Sensual Arts Tantra Yoga community, where we practice every single week on the mat for more. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for listening.